it masquerades, just like you said, as a genre film, a spy thriller, but you can't believe that every note in it is exactly true to history.
I had a chance to speak with you once before for Agent Game. And when this opportunity came up, I was like, well, I guess I just talked to Dermot about spy thrillers.
Like that's right.
What we do. That's our thing.
That one, as dark and intriguing as Agent Game was, wonderful movie. This one's more so, and staggering, really, because of course it's real life, and it's an important kind of partially untold story. So
I fully agree with you. You and for people who are watching, you play former late FBI agent Robert Ames, who was a very, very crucial figure in the CIA in the 70s, 80s. And it's interesting. I think that the way that this show, Ghosts of Beirut, handles discussing real world, real life spy work is really important for people to see.
That's why I would have done it anyway. Gosh, I don't know. It felt like an important part, an important project right from the first page. So I was on board that way, feeling like this is an untold story. This is, it masquerades, just like you said, as a genre film, a spy thriller, but you can't believe that every note in it is exactly true to history. It was meticulously researched. Greg Barker's our man. He's our hero, really, that put this incredibly fragmented story of all these different regions, nations, religious factions together in one storyline in a way that plays like a movie thriller. So for me, I took on the task and the honor of playing Robert Ames in a very deep way. I had personal connections with the character. I'm from that same part of the country, grew up at that same time as his kids did. So I just felt really connected to the character, and I knew that I was, although only appearing in the first part, and when he and his colleagues are taken out of the equation by the bad guy in this storyline, then the story of finding that bad guy becomes that much more important. So I felt it was really important to play this role.
What went into capturing Robert? And I mean, did you read books? Did you get to talk to people who knew him? How did that work?
There's an incredible biography on him that's so detailed, some of which, is really staggering. But best of all for me, some of the details of the actual bombing that took him out are really graphic in ways that you wouldn't want to even put in the film. So that got me much layers deeper, just the end of his story. But most illuminating was his early life, his education, meeting his wife, his big family, Catholic family in the DC area. Now we're getting closer and closer to Dermot's life and connection to this character. So then I took on like a feel for the time and the place that was exactly that I felt, and working around DC. Some of the fathers of friends worked for the State Department, but then weirdly they'd moved to Laos for 2 years. So, you know what I mean? Looking back at, like, they were all spooks, all of them. And like that's Robert Ames never came home. This is an American hero who gave his life for his country. You described it so beautifully that he was the interconnecting. He educated himself. He learned these languages as a young man, and he was the CIA's point guard on their approach to Middle East peace. And then he was taken out of the picture. So 3 more episodes ensue after that play as an intriguing manhunt for this phantom. They called him the Ghost. They didn't have a name for him. There weren't any photos. There wasn't any cell phone data to follow, no surveillance cameras. So they finally pieced it together. His name's Mughniyeh, and they got him about 20 years later. It took forever. It's an amazing story told incredibly by Greg Barker and Showtime and our producers.
It is. It's a truly wild story, and I think as a viewer watching it and understanding that this is all real world stuff that happened prior to the like technological explosion of
Right.
the 90s and 2000s. Like these were men and women who were working with like everything they had available to them to try and track down, a very.
If you look into it, even the technology of the weapons. Anyhow, it's so easy now with the cell phone to
Right.
without going into detail, those were really organic mechanisms that took kind of a type of person to be able to do. Now we're really looking at it from the bad guy side, but fortunately and unfortunately, my side was the good guy side, or at least from Western and United States point of view. But we know in the case of Robert Ames that his motivations were good and that he loved the Middle East. He pursued it his whole life. He wasn't just there as a job. He wasn't grinding it out. He was passionate about what he did, and then he was lost in his prime. So it's a really deep story, and it's so beautifully told again by our intrepid director Greg Parker.
It's a very beautiful story. It's very complicated. It's very complex. It's not just black and white. It's a very gray story across the board. I think
you get to know people on both sides of the coin, and you get to know their families and everything. So it is challenging, emotionally challenging that way, to know that you don't want to know some people's motivations, but once you do, it can be very it can be it can be very confusing, and that's what the filmmakers here are. That's the line they're playing with here. Not to have you like anybody that did terrible things, but to shed light on the whole story is so challenging, and it's done so beautifully here in Ghosts of Beirut.
I agree. And the understanding is valuable, I think, for the viewer.
No doubt. And to know how things went and led to 9/11 and ISIS and everything else to follow. It's all connected over these decades, leading back to even a few years before our story begins. So we are telling ultimately, even this 4 episodes are only a small part of what went down.
Yeah. Well, Dermot, listen, thank you so much for taking time to chat today. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you. Pop Culture. Steven, check you soon. Thanks, man.